Today we're going to be talking about Todd White and his false gospel. Now, Todd White is a known false teacher who focuses upon prosperity gospel and a huge emphasis upon miracles. And of course, he teaches really a self-help or a false gospel in the sense that it's a human-centered gospel instead of a God-centered gospel. In this clip, we're going to be hearing what Todd White says about the cross. Let's give him a listen.
See, the cross to me isn't the revelation of my sin. The cross is actually the revealing of my value. See, we've said that we're worthless and we're worms in the dirt, not realizing that that's what Satan is. Satan's a worm in the dirt and he's worthless. And he's trying to recreate himself in the soul of Christian. Something underneath of that sin must have been of great value for heaven to go bankrupt to get me back.
Here we see a man-centered gospel where he makes, Todd White, the cross all about our human worth. Now, first we need to declare that in Psalm 139, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. The cross does show love, but when you look at the cross, you have to see the wrath of God. And what Todd White is trying to do here is strip God of his holiness. And you really just have to look at really many passages throughout the Old and New Testament, but we can just start with the book of Genesis, chapter 3. Adam and Eve rebel against the Lord. They're cast out of the Lord's presence. They dwell east of Eden. Cain murders his brother. He's under the punishment of God, and he dwells east of Eden. Genesis chapter 6 to chapter 9. Humanity has become corrupt, so much so that the Lord grieves that he has made humanity, and the Lord punishes the earth with the flood. And we can think of Genesis chapter 11, where humanity tries to make a name for itself and build a tower. And the Lord punishes them by dispersing them and bringing forth new languages. In Genesis, Exodus, and all the way to the book of Revelation, we see that God is a holy God who hates sin. You can think of a number of different Psalms, but even just thinking of Psalm chapter 5. Psalm chapter 5, verses 4 to 6. For you're not a God who delights in wickedness. Evil may not dwell with you. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. There we see clearly that God is a holy God. And we see from the scriptures that we as humans have been rebellious against God. We have sinned. We have acted lawless against this holy God. And of course, we see that clear description in Romans chapter 3, verses 9 to 20. All have sinned. All have rebelled. No one sought God. We can also think of Romans 3:23. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And our sin is what destroys us. It puts us at odds with God. We're separated from God. But God in His love sends Jesus to die in our place. And when you look at the cross, you have to see the wrath of God. You have to think about God's wrath at sin, because that's exactly what Jesus Christ bore on the cross, was the wrath of God. All you have to do is look at Romans chapter 3, verses 25, whom God put forward as a propitiation by His blood to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in His divine forbearance He had passed over former sins. Jesus dies as this sacrifice of propitiation. This means that Jesus bears the wrath of God on the cross. And so when you think of the cross, yes, it's God's amazing love. God sends His Son. Christ shows His love by laying down His life for us. But you also have to think about the wrath of God. And to disregard the wrath of God is a serious, gross, misunderstanding of the gospel, God's holiness, and God's grace. God didn't die on the cross because we were good people. God sent his son, Jesus, to die in our place because we were sinful and under God's judgment because of our sin. That's the description of grace. Good is shown to people who do not deserve it. As we see in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. God in his mercy shows grace to people who are under the punishment of sin, in the bondage of sin, and even serving Satan. Good is shown to people who do not deserve it. God shows his amazing love. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5 verse 8. Thanks for watching, and God bless.